So today we've got a story about a guy named Bryce who spent his entire childhood getting tormented by the most popular kid in school. We're talking years of this. The bully's family owned the most popular restaurant in town, the kind of place everybody went for birthdays, anniversaries, Friday nights. 15 years later, that same restaurant goes up for sale because, shocker, the golden boy ran it straight into the ground. And Bryce? He's been quietly building a career in restaurant management this whole time. What he does next is one of the most calculated, patient, stone-cold moves we've ever covered on this channel. You're going to want to hear this one all the way through. I bought my childhood bully's family restaurant, kept every employee except him, and when he applied for a job, I told him we're going in a different direction. I grew up in a mid-sized town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, and if your family has money, you basically run the school. And nobody ran our school like Garrett Ashworth. I need to set this up right, because you have to understand what this guy was. Garrett wasn't just some random kid who shoved me into a locker a couple times. He was the full package, good-looking, charming when adults were watching, captain of the football team junior and senior year, prom king, obviously, and his family owned this restaurant called Ashworth's Table. It had been in their family for like 30 years. Everyone in town ate there. It was the spot, and Garrett knew it. He walked around school like he owned the building, because in a way, his family kind of did. His dad donated to the booster club, sponsored the homecoming float, all that stuff. Teachers let him get away with everything. Me? I was nobody. Skinny kid, kept to myself mostly, wore the same rotation of 3 hoodies. My mom worked 2 jobs, my dad wasn't around, I didn't have a last name that opened doors. I had a last name that got me overlooked. The bullying started in 6th grade. Small stuff at first. Garrett would knock my books off my desk when he walked by, call me Goodwill because of my clothes. His crew thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I'd just pick my stuff up and keep going. What else was I going to do? His dad was on the school board. By 8th grade, it got worse. He started a rumor that my mom was dating one of the janitors at school. She wasn't. She was working double shifts at a nursing home and barely sleeping. But that didn't matter. The rumor stuck. Kids repeated it for months. I'd hear whispers in the hallway and just stare straight ahead and keep walking. High school was the peak of it. Garrett was untouchable by then. Homecoming king, prom king, the whole deal. I started calling him the prom king in my head because that was literally all he was. A guy whose entire identity was built on being the most popular person in a building full of teenagers. That was his crowning achievement, and he wore it like a medal. Sophomore year, he dumped a tray of food on me in the cafeteria, right in front of everyone. Mashed potatoes, gravy, the whole thing. I just sat there, covered in it, while the entire room laughed. A teacher saw it happen. Nothing came of it. Garrett's dad made a phone call, and suddenly it was just an accident. Junior year was more of the same but quieter, which was almost worse. He'd gotten smarter about it by then. Less public stunts, more psychological stuff. He'd walk past me in the hall and mutter something under his breath just loud enough for me and the 2 guys flanking him to hear. Or he'd sit behind me in study hall and kick my chair every 30 seconds for the entire period. Little stuff that doesn't sound like much when you describe it, but try living inside it 5 days a week for 9 months straight. There was one day, I think it was April of junior year, where I was eating lunch by myself near the gym doors. Just a sandwich and some chips, minding my own business. Garrett walked by with a group, and one of them pointed at me and said something I couldn't hear. They all laughed. Garrett looked back at me, made eye contact, and just shook his head. Like I was pathetic. Like my existence was something to pity. I remember thinking that was worse than the food tray. The food tray was at least dramatic. That headshake was just dismissal. Like I didn't even register as a person worth bullying anymore. I was just background noise. Senior year, he mostly ignored me, which I was honestly grateful for. He was too busy being the prom king. Literally, he won prom king and you would have thought he'd won an Oscar. I remember seeing the pictures online. Him in a rented tux with the crown on, his arm around the prom queen, grinning like he'd just accomplished something meaningful. I looked at that photo and thought, this is the best day of your life and you don't even know it yet. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I handled all of it perfectly. There were nights I didn't want to go to school the next day. I'd lie in bed and just stare at the ceiling and think about how unfair it all was. But my mom, she never let me quit. She'd say, "You don't have to be the loudest person in the room, Bryce. You just have to be the last one standing. I didn't fully get it at the time. I do now. I graduated. Barely anybody noticed. Garrett graduated like it was a coronation. They practically rolled out a red carpet. His family threw a massive party at Ashworth's table. Half the town showed up. I saw the pictures on social media and just closed my phone and went to bed. Here's the thing, though. After high school, our paths went in very different directions. I went to community college first. Couldn't afford anything else. Worked part-time at a Denny's to pay for it. And honestly, that Denny's job changed my life. Not because it was glamorous, because it was the opposite. But I learned how restaurants actually worked. The operations side. How the kitchen runs. How you manage food costs. How you schedule staff so you're not burning money on overtime. I got obsessed with the efficiency of it. Transferred to a state school after 2 years. Got a degree in business administration. Nothing fancy. But I kept working in food service the whole time. Moved up from server to shift lead to assistant manager at a chain restaurant near campus. By the time I graduated, I had a degree and 4 years of hands-on restaurant management experience. Most of my classmates had neither. Got hired by a regional restaurant group right out of school. They managed about 12 locations across 3 states. I started as a junior operations coordinator, which is a fancy title for the guy who drives to underperforming locations and figures out why they're losing money. I was good at it. Really good. Turns out when you grow up with nothing, you get real comfortable with tight budgets and making stuff work with limited resources. I remember my first turnaround project, a family-owned Italian place in Indiana that was bleeding cash. I walked in, looked at their ordering system, and found out they were throwing away 30% of their produce every week because nobody was tracking inventory properly. Fixed that in a week. Cut their food costs by a fifth in the first month. The owner, this old Italian guy named Dominic who barely spoke English, hugged me on my last day there. Like full bear hug. Nearly cracked my ribs. That was the moment I knew this was what I wanted to do. Over the next decade, I climbed. Operations manager. Regional director. Eventually, I moved into franchise consulting, helping people who wanted to open restaurants figure out if their concept was viable, and if it was, how to actually run it without going bankrupt in year 1. Spoiler. Most restaurant concepts are not viable. People watch one season of a cooking show and think they can run a kitchen. They cannot. By my early 30s, I was doing well. Not rich. I want to be clear about that. But comfortable. I had savings, a nice apartment, a good car. I'd built something from nothing and I was proud of it. I didn't think about Garrett Ashworth much anymore. He was just a bad memory from a different life. Anyway, I'd kept loose tabs on my hometown through social media. Not stalking, just the normal amount of scrolling where you see people from high school pop up. And I started noticing something about Ashworth's table. The posts were getting desperate, like heavy discount promos. Kids eat free every night. Buy one entree, get one free. The kind of stuff you do when you're hemorrhaging customers and trying to stop the bleeding. The reviews on Google were tanking too. People complaining about cold food, slow service, sticky tables. One review said, "This place used to be special, and now it feels like eating in a waiting room." Brutal. Here's what happened, and I pieced this together from people I still knew in town. Garrett's parents retired about 5 years after I left. They handed the restaurant to Garrett, the golden boy, the prom king, and he proceeded to run it into the ground like he was trying to set a speedrun record. He fired the longtime kitchen manager, a guy named Phil who'd been there since the Clinton administration, because they disagreed on the vision. He changed the menu to some trendy fusion thing that nobody in a mid-size Ohio town wanted. I'm talking deconstructed appetizers and plates with foam on them. Foam on the food. In Ohio. He redecorated the whole place to look like a nightclub for some reason. Dark walls, neon accents, music way too loud for a Tuesday dinner. He hired his friends to work there, and half of them didn't show up on time. He spent money on a logo redesign and social media campaigns instead of, making sure the food was good. Classic stuff. I'd seen it 100 times in my consulting work. Some guy inherits a working business and thinks the first thing he needs to do is put his stamp on it. No. The first thing you need to do is not break what already works. But Garrett never learned that lesson because Garrett never had to learn anything. Everything was always handed to him. The restaurant limped along for years because it had 30 years of goodwill built up. People kept going out of loyalty to his parents. But loyalty only lasts so long when your chicken parmesan shows up cold, and your server is on their phone. Then the lease came up. The landlord wanted a significant rent increase. Normal stuff. The property had appreciated. Garrett couldn't afford it. He'd been operating at a loss for at least 2 years, based on what I heard. His parents had to bail him out once already and told him they weren't doing it again. Ashworth's table went up for sale. The listing hit one of the restaurant industry boards I follow. I wasn't even looking for it. It just popped up in my feed one morning while I was eating cereal. I almost choked. I stared at that listing for probably 10 minutes. The location, the asking price, the kitchen specs, the seating capacity, and something just clicked. Not revenge, or at least, not just revenge. The honest truth is that it was a good opportunity. The bones of the restaurant were solid. Good location, established name recognition, loyal neighborhood customer base that was just waiting for someone to give them a reason to come back. I'd evaluated dozens of acquisitions like this. On paper, this was exactly the kind of turnaround project I specialized in. But yeah, it was also the restaurant owned by the family of the kid who made my life miserable for 7 years. I'm not going to pretend that didn't factor in. I called my business partner, a guy named Owen who I'd been working with for about 3 years. We'd been talking about acquiring our own location instead of just consulting for other people. I walked him through the numbers. He ran his own analysis. We both came to the same conclusion. This was a solid buy at the asking price, especially given the location and the existing infrastructure. We made an offer. It was accepted within a week. Garrett apparently needed the money fast. I wonder why. Hold on. For the listeners, this is me jumping in, not the OP. I need you to sit with this for a second. The prom king, the guy who peaked so hard in high school they should have retired his jersey, took a 30-year-old restaurant that was basically printing money and turned it into a failing nightclub that serves cold chicken. That's like inheriting a Ferrari and putting square wheels on it because you had a vision. This man watched his parents build something incredible and said, "Nah, I think what this town really needs is fusion tacos and mood lighting." I'm not done with him yet. Keep listening. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you buy an existing restaurant, you inherit the staff situation. Some of the employees had been there for years, long before Garrett took over. These were good people. The line cooks, the hostess who'd been seating families since I was in middle school, the dishwasher who'd worked there for over a decade. They weren't the problem. Garrett was the problem. Owen and I sat down and went through the staff roster. We met with every single employee individually, asked them about their experience, what they thought was wrong, what they'd change. Almost all of them said the same thing. The restaurant was great before Garrett started changing everything, and they'd been trying to tell him that for years, but he wouldn't listen. We kept every single employee. Everyone. Everyone except the ones Garrett had brought in. His buddies who treated the place like a hangout spot instead of a job. 3 of them. We let them go during the transition. Standard stuff when you acquire a business. No drama. We're restructuring, and these positions are being eliminated. Clean. Professional. I want to be clear about something. I didn't buy this restaurant to be petty. I bought it because it was a genuinely good investment, and because I knew, from years of doing exactly this kind of work, that I could turn it around. The fact that it belonged to the guy who tortured me as a kid? That was just the universe having a sense of humor. We spent the first 2 months renovating. Nothing crazy. We basically undid everything Garrett had done. Ripped out the nightclub lighting and put in warm, classic fixtures. Brought back the original menu with some updates. Hired a proper kitchen manager, a woman named Deborah who'd run kitchens at 2 other successful spots in the region. Retrained the front of house staff. Fixed the little things. The wobbly tables. The stained menus. The bathroom that always smelled weird. We didn't change the name. That was deliberate. The name Ashworth's Table had 30 years of positive association in that town. People loved that name. They just hated what it had become. So we kept it. Put a small under new management banner out front for the first month and let the food do the talking. Opening week was insane. The whole town showed up. We had a line out the door on Saturday night. Hadn't seen that in years, according to the staff. People who hadn't been in years came back. Families with kids, older couples who'd been going there since the original opening. I overheard an older couple at table 6 say, "It finally feels like the old place again." And honestly, I had to go stand in the walk-in cooler for a minute, because that hit different. The walk-in cooler is also just a great place to stand when you need a second. Every restaurant person knows this. There was this one moment on opening weekend that I keep coming back to. A woman came in with her daughter. The daughter was maybe 8 or 9. And the woman told the hostess, "I used to come here with my mom when I was her age." She looked around the dining room and got this expression on her face like she was remembering something she thought was gone forever. That's when I knew we'd made the right call keeping the name and the spirit of the place. You can't manufacture that kind of connection. You can only protect it or destroy it. Garrett destroyed it. We protected it. Word spread fast. Within 3 months, we were doing numbers that Garrett hadn't hit in years. The Google reviews flipped. Ashworth's table is back. Finally, real food again. Whoever took over, thank you. Owen and I would read the reviews together at the end of every week and just nod at each other. We knew what we had. Now, the part you've been waiting for. About 4 months after we reopened, I got an email. Job application for a server position. And the name on it was Garrett Ashworth. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But there it was. Garrett Ashworth, applying for a server job at the restaurant his family built. The restaurant he ran into the ground. The restaurant I now owned. His resume was something. He listed owner/manager Ashworth's table as his most recent experience, which, I mean, technically accurate. But when your most recent management experience ended because you destroyed the business so badly you had to sell it, maybe don't lead with that. He also listed strong leadership skills and visionary approach to dining concepts. I had to set my laptop down and walk around my apartment for a minute. Owen saw the application too. He looked at me and just said, "You know who that is, right?" Yeah, I knew. Here's the thing. I could have hired him. It would have been the ultimate power move in some ways. The bully working for the kid he bullied, him having to take orders from me. There's a version of this story where that's the satisfying ending. But that's not what I did. And here's why. I thought about it for a couple days. Really sat with it. And I realized that hiring Garrett would make him my problem. I'd seen enough toxic employees in my career to know that someone like him, someone with an ego like that, someone who thought he was above the work, would poison the team. The staff we had was incredible. They were happy. They were performing. The culture was good. Bringing Garrett into that environment would be like dropping a lit match into a room full of good things just so I could watch him squirm. It wasn't worth it. Plus, and this is the real reason, giving him the job would have given him a foothold. A connection to the place. He'd start telling customers, "My family built this, you know." He'd second-guess every decision. He'd try to assert himself because he couldn't help it. I'd seen that movie before. I wasn't going to cast him in it. Yo, time out. Can we appreciate the self-control on this man? Because I'll be honest, if I bought my childhood bully's restaurant and he applied for a job there, I would need to be physically restrained from printing his application on a banner and hanging it outside. But Bryce isn't thinking about revenge here. He's thinking about operations. He's protecting his team, his culture, his investment. This is what happens when the quiet kid in the hoodie grows up and actually learns something, while the prom king spent 15 years coasting on a crown that expired at graduation. Garrett's resume said, "Visionary." My guy, your vision bankrupted a 30-year institution. That's not a resume. That's a confession. I scheduled a meeting with Garrett. Not a phone call, a sit-down. I figured after everything, I owed it to myself to handle this face-to-face. We met at the restaurant on a Tuesday morning before we opened. He walked in, and I watched his face as he looked around. You could see it. The recognition mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe. Or discomfort. The place looked completely different from what he'd turned it into, but it also looked exactly like what it used to be when his parents ran it. I think that messed with him more than anything. He sat down across from me at one of the booths. I don't think he recognized me at first. It had been 15 years, and I wasn't a skinny kid in a hoodie anymore. I'd filled out, dressed decent, and, not to be dramatic about it, I looked like what I was. A guy who owned the building we were sitting in. "Bryce?" he said. I could see him cycling through his mental files trying to place me. Then it clicked. His eyes changed. "Bryce Callahan, from Ridgeview?" "Yeah, I bought the restaurant." I kept my voice neutral. Business mode. No emotion. He shifted in his seat. I could tell he was recalculating. He'd walked in thinking this was a job interview. Now he was realizing it was something else. He tried to recover. flashed that same smile he used to use on teachers. Man, it's been forever. The place looks amazing. You guys did a great job with the renovation. Thanks. He waited for more. I didn't give him more. So, he said, about the server position. We're going in a different direction. That was it. That was the whole sentence. I'd been thinking about how to phrase it for 2 days, and that's what I landed on. Clean, professional, no malice, no gloating, just a business decision delivered in a business tone. He blinked. What do you mean? We haven't even talked about. I reviewed your application. We appreciate the interest, but the position isn't the right fit. We're going in a different direction. I watched his jaw tighten. The prom king wasn't used to hearing no, especially not from someone like me, someone he'd spent years treating like furniture. Is this because of... come on, Bryce. That was high school. We were kids. I almost laughed. Almost. This is a staffing decision. We have a strong team and we're looking for a specific type of experience for the role. I wish you the best. I stood up, shook his hand. Firm, brief, professional, and I walked into the kitchen to start prep for the day. He sat in that booth for maybe another minute or two. Then he left. I heard the door close and I just kept dicing onions. Deborah looked at me and raised an eyebrow, like she could tell something had just happened. I just shrugged and said, "Old acquaintance," and she went back to inventory. Wait. Let me jump in here because this moment is cinema. Actual cinema. You know that scene in every revenge movie where the hero finally confronts the villain and delivers some long dramatic speech? Bryce didn't do that. He gave him 7 words. We're going in a different direction. That's it. No monologue, no, remember when you dumped food on me, no emotional breakdown, just boardroom energy in a restaurant booth. You know what this reminds me of? The end of The Godfather, where Michael Corleone just calmly closes the door. Except instead of organized crime, it's organized chicken parmesan, and the prom king just got locked out of his own kingdom. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. After Garrett left, I didn't hear from him directly again, but I heard plenty from other people. Apparently, he told everyone in town that I'd bought the restaurant just to get back at him. That I was obsessed with high school stuff. That I'd stolen his family's legacy. The usual narrative rewrite that people do when they can't accept that they caused their own problems. Most people didn't buy it. The town could see the numbers. They could see the packed dining room on weekends. They could taste the food. They could see the staff smiling instead of looking like hostages. Actions speak louder than a guy's bruised ego running his mouth at, well, wherever he was spending his time. I honestly don't know. Probably somewhere talking about how unfair everything was. His parents, interestingly, came in for dinner about 2 months after the reopening. I recognized his mom immediately. She looked older, but she had the same kind face. I went to their table personally. She looked at me and I could tell she knew exactly who I was. "You're doing a wonderful job with the place," she said. And she meant it. I could hear it in her voice. There was no resentment, no awkwardness. If anything, she seemed relieved. I think watching her son destroy what they'd built was harder on her than losing the restaurant itself. His dad shook my hand. Didn't say much. But the handshake was firm, and he looked me in the eye and nodded. That nod said everything. We didn't talk about Garrett. We didn't need to. They became regulars after that. Every other Sunday. I always made sure their table was ready. I never charged them. Owen said I was being too generous, but I told him some things aren't about the money. These were good people who built something real. It wasn't their fault their son treated it like a toy. The restaurant kept growing. We hit our revenue targets ahead of schedule. 6 months in, we expanded the patio seating. 8 months in, we started catering for local events. By the 1-year mark, Owen and I were already talking about whether the Ashworth's table model was replicable. Like, could we do this in another town with another underperforming restaurant? And through all of it, I kept thinking about what my mom said. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You just have to be the last one standing. She came to the restaurant once, about 3 months in. I sat her at the best table, brought her the house special personally. She looked around the place, the warm lighting, the full dining room, the staff moving efficiently, and she got quiet. Then she just said, "I'm proud of you, kid." I had to do the walk-in cooler thing again after that. Okay, pause. I just need to point something out. You know what Bryce didn't do at any point in this story? He didn't gloat. He didn't post on social media. He didn't tell the town I showed him. He diced onions. He served his bully's parents dinner. He made his mom proud. Meanwhile, the prom king is telling anybody who'll listen that Bryce is obsessed. My brother in mediocrity, the only person obsessed with high school, is the guy whose identity expired with his diploma. Bryce moved on so hard he accidentally lapped the guy. What's next? Garrett starts a podcast about how he was the victim. Don't answer that. He probably already has. I should talk about the staff for a second because they're a huge part of this. When we took over, most of the long-timers were demoralized. They'd watched the restaurant decline for years and felt powerless to stop it. Garrett didn't listen to them. He brought in his friends over them. A few of them were actively looking for other jobs when we acquired the place. We changed that immediately. Gave everyone a small raise in the first month. Nothing crazy, but enough to show we were serious. Promoted a server named Andy to front of house lead because he'd been doing the job anyway without the title or the pay. Fixed the scheduling system so people could actually plan their lives. Basic stuff that Garrett never bothered with. You know what happened? People started caring again. The energy shifted overnight. Andy started running pre-shift meetings on his own because he wanted to. The kitchen crew stopped calling in sick because they actually wanted to be there. Our turnover rate in the first year was basically 0, which in the restaurant industry is unheard of. Normally, you're replacing half your staff every 6 months. I learned something from that, something I probably should have figured out earlier in my career. People don't leave bad restaurants. They leave bad managers. Every single one of those employees was capable the whole time. They just needed someone who wasn't actively working against them. That's a weird sentence, but you know what I mean. Anyway, about 8 months in, I got a DM on social media from Garrett. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got me. It was long, rambling. The short version. He wanted to know if I'd reconsider the job. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking, and he felt like he deserved a chance to be part of the legacy. He mentioned that working there would mean a lot to his family. He said he'd take any position and that he wouldn't cause problems. I read it twice. Then I typed back one sentence. I appreciate you reaching out. The answer is the same. Best of luck. And I closed the app. That might sound cold. Maybe it is. But here's what I know from running restaurants for over a decade. When someone tells you I won't cause problems, they're telling you they know they're a problem. Garrett wasn't applying because he wanted to work. He was applying because he wanted to be connected to the name, to the building, to the thing he lost. And I wasn't going to give him that. Not because of high school, because of business. Owen agreed. He'd seen the DM and his exact words were, "That reads like someone who wants a job title, not a job." Exactly. Final update. It's been about a year since we opened. The restaurant is doing better than it's done in probably a decade. We're profitable. The staff is solid. The community supports us. Owen and I are looking at a second location in a town about 40 minutes south. Another underperforming spot with good bones that just needs competent management. Garrett, from what I hear, moved out of town a few months ago. I don't know where he went, and honestly, I don't care. I wish him well in the general way you wish well to someone you never think about. I hope he figures his stuff out. But he's not my concern, and he hasn't been since the day I closed that laptop. My mom still comes in every few weeks. She always sits at table 6. She always orders the same thing, the roasted chicken with garlic potatoes. She always leaves a tip even though I tell her not to. And she always says the same thing when she leaves. Your dad would have loved this place. I never met the guy, so I don't know if that's true, but it's nice to hear. Oh, one more thing. When we first reopened, I found something in the storage room during renovation. An old framed photo from the restaurant's original opening day, like 30 years ago. Garrett's grandparents cutting a ribbon out front. I had it cleaned and reframed and hung it right by the entrance. It's the first thing you see when you walk in. Because here's the thing. The restaurant's history is worth honoring. What the Ashworth family built was real, and it mattered. The fact that Garrett couldn't maintain it doesn't erase what came before him. I'm just the guy who made sure the next chapter was worth reading. Some people peak in high school. Some people are just getting started. So yeah, that's my story. I bought my childhood bully's restaurant, kept his whole staff, turned it around, and when he came asking for a job, I told him we were going in a different direction. Was I wrong for not hiring him? Would you have done the same thing? Drop a comment. I genuinely want to know. All right, look, this story gets me every time. Bryce didn't plot some dramatic revenge. He just lived his life, got really good at what he does, and when the opportunity showed up, he handled it like a professional. No speeches, no gloating, just 7 words and a handshake. And the fact that he hung up that old family photo by the entrance, that tells you everything about this guy. If you've ever been the quiet kid who got overlooked, this one was for you. Drop a comment. Would you have hired Garrett or done the same thing? Hit subscribe if you haven't, and I'll catch you in the next one.